My name is Kevin,
Hi, my name is Nate.
and you are watching.
We're watching Film Dispute right now. Today we're talking about movies today. That's what we do here in Film Dispute. All right. So we
Absolutely. We got a couple buttes for you.
all right. Yeah. No. So we saw a few movies. We went and saw Toy Story 4, and so Toy Story 4. I think that's a movie that I think a lot of people weren't expect had low expectations for. It's a movie that because everybody thought that Toy Story 3 ended off the trilogy very well. So you see this movie coming out, especially at during a time where Pixar is kind of at a weird spot right now. I would say they're kind of inconsistent.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Definitely. They've had more misses than hits lately, in my opinion. And I think that's part of why they wanted to bring Toy Story back. This story, I'm going to say it wasn't necessary, but it was a good surprise.
Exactly. Yeah, it was so like absolutely fun. It was great. It was the extra mile that they took into creating this. The thing about this one is that it doesn't feel like any of the other Toy Stories. It's kind of more of its own thing.
And they've advanced so much, even since Toy Story 3, as far as the animation qualities. I actually felt, especially in the first 10 minutes of this movie, that these were toys in the real world, and I'd never felt like that in a Toy Story movie before, just because the set pieces and the environments that they were in never really looked too real, and they did a very good job with the aesthetics of this movie.
Yeah, I was completely speechless. Like I feel like with every Pixar movie, they always up
Their game, yeah.
their game when it comes to animation. Like I thought, what was it, like Finding Dory? That like
Yeah.
the ocean effects looked amazing in that, and like Incredibles looked great. But
This had also, speaking of Dory, Finding Dory. This had the same qualities as the kind of fish out of water story like Finding Dory did. They're lost in the city in both movies.
yeah, no, that's a true point too. And like the other thing is that, I mean, yeah, this animation, it's hyper realistic.
Yeah,
The rain effects,
the rain. Yeah,
it's just, and yeah, the toys and everybody, it just feels so crisp and oh my gosh, it's crazy.
yeah.
Um,
I really enjoyed it.
no, definitely.
I'd even go far as to say I liked it better than Toy Story 3.
That's hard for me to say because Toy Story 3, that one. Well, the thing is with all of these Toy Story movies, all these Toy Story movies, they teach like a lesson about the realities of being a child and adolescence. With Toy Story 1, it showed that kids are kids. They're not trying to. I think like with the villain in Toy Story 1, there wasn't really a villain. It's just besides really Sid.
I see.
I guess Sid.
It was a human villain, and it was a kid, which made it even more understandable.
Exactly. I mean, because he's a kid. He just
Yeah.
wants to play, and he just likes to destroy toys. It's nothing like he's just a kid.
Yep.
You know?
You break shit because you're a kid, and this kid's broke more than a few
Exactly.
toys.
And then with Toy Story 2, you kind of saw like the sort of adults that are obsessed with like toys.
Yep.
With that one character.
An even bigger bad, just because he's older.
Yeah, I mean he's not like bad or anything. He's just a guy who's obsessed with like he has like this sort of OCD
Yeah.
vibe to him, and with
And I think that's what all the Toy Stories give you. There really is never a villain,
per
but
se.
you always get to understand where the villain is coming from. And
Yeah.
in number one, it was Sid, and in number two, it was that old guy.
That, I
With
can't
the-
remember
with
his
the
name. The
beard.
guy with the thinning hair, with the
Creepy
thinning
dude.
hair, yeah. And then Toy Story 3, you have the bear.
Mhm.
Which,
That was the one thing I didn't like about that movie. That movie would have been just as good as number one and number two for me, but the bear, I just didn't care for the villain all that much, and it left me hanging out to dry a little bit. But I loved the villain in this one. You know,
yeah, like I said, this one, the villain in Toy Story 4, it's you get where she's coming from. You get where she's coming from because like on one side she's like, she gets a little antsy or whatever. She's wants to get what she wants because she feels that would make her
Whole.
feel like
complete and useful.
Yeah, exactly, to a child. And so you see where she's coming from, and eventually she gets what she wants in the end, and
In a roundabout way.
yeah, and it kind of and it falls through because this movie shows like kids, like, they're not gonna like everything, you know.
Yeah.
Just because something's new or whatever, even though the villain here is from like manufactured from like the 50s.
Yeah.
Just because she's technically brand new doesn't make a kid want that toy.
Yeah, she was defective from the factory. Her voice box was defective, and that's why she's on the hunt for a new voice box.
Yeah, exactly.
And Woody is the target. But I think that kind of wraps up Toy Story 4.
Yeah,
I definitely enjoyed it. You want to give it a quick rating or no?
Jeez. Yeah, I probably give it in like a 7 to an 8.
Yeah, I was gonna say 8.
7 to an 8. I did really enjoy it, and
it was short, which was nice.
yeah, it was shorter. It didn't have to be too long.
Just like every Pixar movie.
Did it make you cry?
Cry? No.
Did it make you cry?
I definitely got emotional just because the music. It's the same music basically from all the movies, and from 1 and 2, it really gets me because it reminds me of 1 and 2. So when I hear that music gets me a little bit. But yeah, no.
Did you have any issues with it, like, at all?
Issues? I did have an issue, which was near the middle of the film, maybe 3/4 of the way through. Everyone, it's that cliche where, okay, this person left to go find this person who also left. And then those people are both gone, and so now someone else is leaving to go find, and then one of the people comes back. And so now 2 people are gone, and then someone else comes back, and someone else goes out to help and save them. And it got a little repetitive.
I get you, yeah. Was it just me, or did Buzz Lightyear seem kind of dumb in this movie?
I told a friend of mine that I think the next Toy Story movie could be a Buzz Lightyear movie. Could be centered at least on him, just like this movie was centered on Woody. I think the next movie could be a Buzz movie, and I'm all for it, because Buzz, I think, was the only one who got shortchanged in this movie.
Yeah, but like it felt like he was. I mean, there's that whole thing.
Yeah.
There's this running joke, I guess, where he was kind of like listening to his inner voice, and by doing that, he would press like one of the buttons on his toys.
Yeah.
I mean, on his body. On his suit or whatever.
Yeah.
And
did you have one of those, by the way?
Did I have a Buzz Lightyear?
Toy Buzz Lightyear?
Dude, I wish. I would get so jealous by kids who did have like a Buzz Lightyear toy or like a Woody toy. I would get so jealous because I didn't have that.
Yeah, I went through like a 3-year phase. Like from 3, 4, and 5 years old, I was Toy Storied out, and so I had him, and so that's why I kind of liked that he was pressing the buttons on him, because it is the actual. It's what the toy said.
It's the actual voice recording.
So that sparked a little.
Yeah, no, and definitely, but I feel like in this movie, it just like Woody, it made sense. It made sense on his personality. He was always kind of like selfish, even especially in the first Toy Story movies. He was selfish about Buzz Lightyear being like the new toy for Andy, and this one, he's kind of jealous that he's not being played as much than like the other toys, and so his character made sense. But like Buzz Lightyear, like I feel like they didn't.
Real quick, Woody's also grown a lot, because this whole movie, he's saving people instead of, because Forky's the new favorite, at least for the girl, and so he's saving because he was trying to push Buzz away from Andy because he was jealous. But in this movie, he's less jealous. He's definitely more thoughtful. He's almost like a parent to these forks and these toys, and he's definitely shown growth. But go ahead.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry.
Just back to Buzz. I felt like in this character and with some of the other characters too, they kind of underutilized them. Buzz Lightyear, more of just like his personality. I feel like Buzz is more wiser than he is in this movie. I mean, especially since you've seen him grow these past few movies. Obviously in the first movie he was kind of like an idiot because
he's always been wise in a delusional way, because as soon as he gets on into Andy's room, he thinks it's a new planet and he's freaking out, and he's asking for help on his microphone or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And he's always been kind of he thinks he's the smartest one in the room, but he's always been kind of dumb, just like Woody.
I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I felt like
He was definitely dumb in this movie, though.
yeah, I felt like
Which is why
it was just a little bit odd for me. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
that's why I hope Toy Story 5 centers on Buzz
if they
Lightyear
do make
more.
one, yeah, I don't
They
know.
got to at this
it'll
point,
be
right?
it'll be a while. Yeah, it'll be a while from now when they make a new Toy Story movie. I feel like they're trying to.
When did 3 come out?
3 came out like 2010, I believe.
I think it was like 2013. I think it was
Really? I thought it was 2010.
Vamp. I'm gonna look it up. 3. 2010. You were right.
Yeah, 2010. That's crazy. That's been 9 years
It
since.
seems too long.
It
Yeah.
feels like it feels like it hasn't been that long since Toy Story 3 came out.
I guess that's why the animation was so much better. They had 9 years to perfect their craft. there.
Exactly. But yeah, I enjoyed this movie. I think it took a lot of risks. I expected this movie to be very safe and just like a safe sequel, kind of like how Incredibles 2 was. I felt like,
Yeah.
Incredibles 2 felt like such a rehash of just like the first one. So I thought the same thing. I thought they were just gonna, make this movie as a cash grab, which technically it is a cash grab because it's Toy Story. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody wants to watch it, but they made like a good one.
That's the thing about animation sequels, though. They've already built the world. They know what these toys will look like. They don't have to create anything except for the storyline
Mm-hmm.
because they've already got all these things generated and planned out. So it's a lot easier to make a sequel to an animation movie, and I think it's easy to see. It's easy to be in a boardroom and say, let's just make another Toy Story. It made a fucking $1 billion or whatever. So I'm glad they actually had something to say with this movie, and I'm glad they actually made something good out of it.
Yeah, of course, and especially from like a new director too. I don't think this director has made any other Toy Story movies. I know he's probably been like a part of the team, but this is his first time. This is the first time that who's the guy? John
Lasseter.
John Lasseter. This is the first one that he hasn't directed, I believe. And now it's this new guy, but like I feel like, yeah, he's looking up the name
Sorry,
right now.
I switched to Spider-Man too quickly. Yeah, Josh Cooley.
Josh Cooley.
I'm gonna see. The writers, John Lasseter was a writer.
Yeah, he was a writer.
Cooley did Inside Out. It looks like he did Up, Ratatouille.
Okay.
Oh, wait, sorry. Cut all of that. It was all wrong. All right, so he directed. Yeah, this is his first major direction. He's worked in the art department on most other films. He's worked on Inside Out, Up, Ratatouille. So
Oh, okay.
he's in the mix. But
Dude, I mean, yeah, definitely. But this is the first one that's not directed by John Lasseter, and he did a great job.
Oh, yeah.
He did a great job. So, yeah, I'd give it like a 7 or an 8.
all right.
I want to watch it again, see if I do appreciate it more the first time than I do the second time. So, yeah. The next movie that we're going to be talking about is Spider-Man Far From Home. We just got out of seeing this movie actually like a few minutes ago as we're recording this. And this one, I gotta say, I'm not the biggest fan of Marvel movies. I'm kind of indifferent usually when it comes to Marvel movies. I'll watch them because I'll have a good time with them.
Yeah.
It's whatever, but usually they don't blow my mind. Particularly the first Spider-Man Homecoming, I thought it was alright. I thought it was like just a regular like sort of high school type of movie.
Yeah, after seeing all the movies with the Avengers and stuff like that, it was hard to force the Avengers fans and the Marvel fans to go back to a high school setting, and it kind of lowered the stakes because we've seen in all these movies the world's exploding and it's 2 seconds from blowing up, and just to be stuck in a high school for the entire movie basically lowered the stakes and lowered how much I cared about that movie. But this one definitely delivered.
This one did, because this is the first movie where this is the first like Spider-Man movie where it doesn't take place in like New York or anything. It takes place in like a bunch of different
far
places.
from home.
Yeah, it takes place in a bunch of different countries.
Yeah, they go to Prague. They go all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. And it is enjoyable. I was kind of surprised about how this movie went. Tom Holland as Spider-Man. While I don't think he's as good as the guy who played Miles Morales in Into the Spider-Verse. In my opinion, Into the Spider-Verse is better than this movie, but like this one, this one does like a lot of things I felt like Marvel movies wouldn't do. I don't know. It did like a lot of certain things that just like blew me away. Just about how like cool visually it looked. It was crazy.
Mysterio was one of my favorite parts. Just the way he looked. Exactly. Just his costume was one of the favorite parts.
Yeah, no, his character and all the visuals that you see from the things he does, it's insane. It's crazy. And Jake Gyllenhaal, oh my gosh, I was excited. That was the one thing that I was excited with this movie, was to see Jake Gyllenhaal in the
Marvel
movies.
Universe, because he's a great actor and he's an asset to have in the Marvel Universe.
Apparently, actually, Jake Gyllenhaal, it's cool that they brought him in too, because apparently Jake Gyllenhaal was supposed to be Spider-Man in the Sam Raimi movies. He was supposed to.
That's right.
Yeah, he was supposed to play as Spider-Man. I don't know, but then they got Tobey Maguire or something. Apparently, it was supposed to be. From what I can remember, it was supposed to be Matt Damon who was supposed to play Spider-Man, and then Matt Damon wouldn't do it, and then Jake Gyllenhaal was supposed to play it, but then they got Tobey Maguire. So I don't know. I think that's the story on how that worked out. But they brought him back here to play as Mysterio.
Yeah. And he knocked it out of the park.
He did. He really did. I guess like with this one, it kind of focuses a lot on Peter Parker and how he's trying to get with Mary Jane. Funny enough, that is a big focus on this movie. And as much as like how small time that sounds like, it sounds like a side quest or whatever. It just feels it just really works for this movie.
Yeah, this is definitely like the middle movie of a trilogy type deal, because the first one we were learning about Spider-Man and learning, okay, here's Mary Jane, here's this, here's that, and then he does take on a foe and we learn his power in the end of the first one. But in this one we really get to see where his headspace at, especially after the snap and after Tony Stark's death. We definitely get to see more of where he's at, where these characters are heading, because it's one thing to have one point. If you have a point and then a second point, you can kind of draw the line and you see where the third movie is going. But this one was obviously
this was the beginning of a new era with Marvel movies.
Yeah, it was Spider-Man's. I think this is the weakest we're gonna see Spider-Man. I think he's only gonna get stronger from here.
Yeah, of course.
And I do think whether the people want it or not, I think he is supposed to be that Iron Man type of guy for this new generation, this new tier of Spider-Man of Marvel movies.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like people might get upset about that, really, because that's why people like Spider-Man, because he's flawed. He's a very flawed character because he's just a kid.
Yeah,
and
I think we're gonna see a lot less flaws. I think this is the end of his flaw stage. I think he's going to be a lot smarter, because I'm not going to spoil it, but at the end he kind of one-ups Mysterio in a big way, and you can tell he's definitely grown both intelligently and his powers are just keep going up.
Yeah, especially
with the help of Tony Stark.
With issues with this movie, I'm trying to think, because like I feel like it's hard to come up with very many issues. I guess some of the jokes don't kind of fall flat a little.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I did like laugh quite a bit. There was a lot of like,
oh yeah, it was definitely funny.
Yeah. Or something like that.
But one of the flaws, I do think Jake Gyllenhaal's dialogue was written a little like smacking you in the head with some of the things that kids might not pick up on. And
did you think so?
Yeah, some of it was like, here's what's happening now, and
I guess that's true.
But it's hard. You're right. It's hard to find a flaw in this movie. I'm really nitpicking.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the only thing is just that it didn't blow me away. I guess it's just kind of like it didn't like absolutely blow me away. I did like a lot of things that I felt like they didn't do in other Marvel movies, but as far as I know, like, it's just like, another fun like Marvel movie.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
None of the characters got shortchanged. There's no one who I wanted to see more of or less of.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Like they really utilize like pretty much all of the characters here. You gotta see enough of Nick Fury. You gotta see enough of the like of Spider-Man's friends.
Yep.
You got to see enough of like even like Aunt May.
Yeah,
You know?
and Jon Favreau is actually
Jon
a big part. I'd say he's like the third main character in this thing. It's,
Yeah,
it's Spider-Man, Jake Gyllenhaal, and then Jon Favreau. So, yeah, I was really happy. I love seeing Jon Favreau in these movies, especially since what he did with Iron Man. And he's a good character. He kind of, I think he was in this movie a lot to kind of take Tony Stark's place a little bit in the hearts of the fans, because we're still grieving after Endgame.
Yeah, exactly.
Our condolences. A moment of silence.
Yeah. Well,
But yeah, I enjoyed it. I would give it a. I haven't thought about my score yet, so I got.
I'd give it like a 7.
7.
I'd say I enjoyed Toy Story more. I think than this movie. Watching them back to back, I felt like I did like Toy Story. I think that one just emotionally. That one had much more of a emotionally grabbed me more than Spider-Man.
Yeah.
This one was just kind of just like nice.
Yeah. This one. That's why I say it wasn't really. This movie was kind of a middle trilogy movie because it's not really trying to grab you. This is kind of Spider-Man at his darkest point. And so I think it was less emotional than Toy Story, but I think Toy Story was trying to be more emotional in general.
Yeah.
So it's hard to compare these two movies, but I'd say they're about the same. I'd give this movie about an 8.
Okay, I'd give it like a light 7.
Yeah, maybe 7.5.
7.5.
All right.
Yeah, but
that'll do it for Spider-Man. We are moving on into Goodfellas. Let us know what you thought about Toy Story and Spider-Man in the comments below. And we are going to move on to Goodfellas.
Yeah, and for this one, we're going to be spoiling the entire movie. So if you want to,
because fuck it.
Yeah, no. If you just want to watch it, you can discuss it with us maybe in the comments. Maybe. Yeah.
Don't talk to me.
Yeah, do it.
Don't talk to me.
You guys got it. All right. So yeah, Goodfellas.
All right, you want me to lead it off real quick? Goodfellas, the biocrime drama.
Yes.
2 hours and 26 minutes, made in 1990.
Yep, it stars Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Lorraine Bracco, Paul Sorvino, and yeah, those are like the cast, I believe.
Budget of $25 million,
Mm-hmm.
made 47. So
okay, so it was a big hit. It was a big hit for the time. And so the film tells the true story of Henry Hill and the growth of his gangster lifestyle. Goodfellas discusses several events from the mid-1950s to 1980, including the murder of Billy Bass, the Lufthansa heist, and ultimately the rise and fall of Henry Hill.
Yep.
So, Kevin, what did you think of this film?
This is one of my favorite films. If you go back and watch our very first podcast about our top 10 films, you can hear more about it there. But yeah, this is one of my favorites. I can't remember what you said about it.
When I talked to you about that and how this was like one of your top five, I believe, favorite films.
Yep.
I said, yeah, I like it. It's not my favorite Martin Scorsese movie, because I personally liked Raging Bull more, or like Wolf of Wall Street. Even though Wolf of Wall Street, this Wolf of Wall Street and Goodfellas, they go hand in hand like very well. They're very similar in tone and like the way the story is told, and very similar, which could be either a fault or a pro. But after watching this movie again, after revisiting this, and this is probably like my 5th time watching this movie, I gotta say, I felt like I was watching a different movie, because like this movie, it blew me away. Just the way the story was told, all technically, and not even that, and not only that, but like after researching it, the authenticity of this movie.
If you read, Scorsese was growing up around similar people to these, and he definitely learned a lot from it.
Exactly, but like not only that, Martin Scorsese tried his best to make this story as authentic as possible.
Before every shot, he would fix every actor's tie. That's how much he cared. He would physically go up and fix their tie.
Yeah, and he would have his parents iron out their suits because he felt like they were the only two that would probably be able to fix their collars.
Mhm.
And so I mean, it's crazy the lengths that Martin Scorsese has done with this movie because it is absolutely amazing. It's insane.
Oh, it's a ride that you never really want to stop, especially when things are good for these characters. You want it to stay good, and when they get bad, you want it to somehow not happen the way it ends up. But we are going to get into it.
So let's start with the opening titles.
Okay.
Of this, because like this is interesting. This is not like this is kind of like the weird opening titles that you wouldn't see in many other films. It's like kind of like like the titles act like as if they're like cars passing by.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the style of it's already kind of setting the tone that this is gonna be sort of like a drive,
Yeah.
like
This whole movie
is
is class. Everything's done properly.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts out. It says New York, 1970. And it's the Billy Bats trunk scene, and so half the people in the car are asleep, and they hear the knocking. They go out. Joe Pesci shoots him, or stabs him.
Yeah, Joe Pesci just stabs him
Stabs him.
I mean, already you see like, oh, okay, this movie is gonna go down now. I mean, this is not messing with anything, and then
you get the Rags to Riches song, and then the credits begin.
Yeah, I mean, Henry Hill, Ray Liotta, he says his famous line on how all of his life
I wanted to be a gangster.
Yeah, all of his life he wanted to be a gangster. And it just, oh my gosh.
That's all you need to know about him.
Exactly. Already from like, you see Ray Liotta's narration and his, the way he observes these mafia gangsters. Throughout the entire movie, Ray Liotta is narrating through the movie, which to a lot of like film students or like people in the film industry would find that to be like a
weak storytelling.
Like a lazy way of telling a story. But the thing that Martin Scorsese does, he shows and tells his story with great dialogue, because pretty much almost everything that Ray Liotta says is golden.
Yeah, and every word you can kind of glean something from. You can kind of see between the lines on the things and how he describes things. And so between the visual details you're getting as well as the voiceover, you really get to build a world that you can seep yourself into.
He easily builds the characters of the different mobsters. You know, Paul is Serbino, whatever his name is.
Paul Beatty, I believe, or yeah, it's Paul.
The top dog, mob boss, 2D, the 2D, and like all these different mobsters. He builds them up just by talking about them, and by showing like just the way they act.
Yeah, he almost talks about them as if they're a myth. You know, he's like, you know, he doesn't answer the phone, he doesn't do this, and so he really gets to show you the power that these guys have over Henry. And when you travel back to 1955 from 1970, you get to see why Henry got mixed up in all this.
Oh yeah, of course.
So 2D runs the cab stand and the pizzeria. Paulie takes no shit. That's a fact. Henry's dad started working when he was 11, which gets to tell you a lot about his growing up. And, you know, Henry didn't want to start working when he was 11. He wanted to live the good life with these gangsters. And when Henry's dad beats him with that belt, and Henry kind of just takes it, you know. He's not wincing or anything. He's learned by that point to take his licks like a man, like Jimmy would tell him. And you get to see the full formation of Henry.
Yeah, you see his dad whipping him for not going to school for the past few months. Now, after researching this, the real Henry Hill, it's not like he didn't like going to school. He actually did like going to school. The thing is, though, he had dyslexia. He had a bunch of these learning disabilities that kind of prevented him from doing that. And so, because of that, like teachers, like students, did not think he was stable. He was a stable person. He thought he was they thought he was special. They thought he was just a person with bad behavior. And so because of that, Henry sort of just resented that. He resented that and just felt like there was no future in him in school.
Yeah.
And so that's what really
everyone's casting him aside, and finally these people took him in.
Yeah, these mobsters. And he realized how good of a life these people live.
He would have been happy for anyone to take him in, but he was lucky enough, in quotes, to get picked up. And by the way, this is all based on a true story. We should have said that at the top.
Oh yeah, of course.
But yeah, these people take him in, and he gets to see. You can tell they've done this with kids in the past. You know, you kind of get that feeling that this is someone they're trying to draft into this business. And Henry takes it with flying colors. He takes it all the way, and he becomes one of the main three guys.
Exactly. Yeah. So you see him. He's with these guys now. He meets Jimmy Conway, who's like this, is a guy that nobody messes with.
Oh, he comes in the bar passing 20s here, 20 there. Give me this. He wants a 7 and 7, which is
Robert De Niro here. Oh my gosh.
Which is why I say this movie just bleeds class, and you want to these are characters you want to revisit. That's why it was part of my top 5. It reminds me of Jaws. Those 3 characters, Hooper, Quint, and Robert
Shire.
Robert Snyder, or whatever his name was.
I think it's Shire.
Roy Snyder, excuse me.
Roy Scheider.
Yeah, those 3 characters you want to spend time with. You want to sit at that bar and drink the fucking whiskey with the guys and just talk about stories. And what I would do to be at the bar with Jimmy, Tommy, and Henry.
Well, maybe not Tommy.
Tommy. Yeah.
Maybe not Tommy.
We saw what happened to Spider.
Yeah, I know. Tommy in this movie, played by Joe Pesci, is like, he's likable, but like at the same time, you do not want to lay a finger on him.
Joe Pesci, I believe, won the Oscar for this movie.
He won the Oscar for best supporting actor.
Yeah, the only Oscar for this movie.
And gave the shortest Oscar speech ever.
Yeah.
He did. Like, he just grabbed his award and he's just like, "Thank you very much for this award," and he just walks away. That's really all he did. And he just walked away. And so, Henry Hill, he meets Jimmy Conway, he meets Tommy when he's young, and eventually, he's living the life. He's living the life. He's making
He starts
money.
out parking Cadillacs. He starts out with small stuff.
Yeah, selling cigarettes.
Selling cigarettes with Tommy. That's where he meets Tommy.
Yeah.
They get in trouble by the cops.
Pinched.
Gets pinched. But he took his first pinch like a man. He didn't say anything. And he didn't tell anything. Mm-hmm. And he gets rewarded for that by Jimmy.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's when Jimmy really realizes what he has in Henry. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when Jimmy starts to take an interest in drafting Henry to be one of the top dogs.
Mm-hmm. In real life, actually, in between this, him becoming a mobster or whatever, in real life he actually left the gang for a while, and he went to like this military facility, I believe. I'm trying to remember what it was, but he left for a while, but then eventually he got back into his his bad habits.
Yeah.
And
his old ways.
And so it jumps into him in the movie. It jumps into him being an adult now. He's
rise through the ranks.
Yeah, exactly. He's part of he's good friends with Jimmy now and Tommy. And then from here on it goes into
Tootie threatens the mailman because of his grades, Henry's grades. Let's just go back to that real quick, because it is an important part, because that's when Henry really sees what he's into. That's the first time he's ever in contact with the things that these guys are doing, the violent things. Mm-hmm. And so when he shoves that mailman's head, when they shove the mailman's head into the pizza oven, that's his first taste of being bad.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, but then just after that pizzeria scene with the mailman, a guy comes up to the pizza store and he's shot. and Henry goes up and tries to help him. He brings a bunch of aprons to try and stop the bleeding, and Tootie hates that. He thinks it's a waste because Tootie's been in that lifestyle for a while, and he knows people get shot, and you don't have to deal with it. But you do get to see that Henry comes from a good family, and he's actually a good person, I think, especially in this scene, just because his instinct is to help. And so you're going to see that instinct rotten over time to where he just isn't caring at all, even for the people he loves. And I think that is an important scene for his development.
Yeah, of course. You see him now as a grown adult, and he is now with these mobsters, as if they're all friends now. You see him at a what is it? A club, like a sort of club, like in a restaurant or wherever.
Yep.
And so you get into this famous scene of just of pretty much introducing Joe Pesci as Tommy, and like seriously one of the best introductions to like a character. Really, it's just like you think, you know, he's Joe Pesci, he's cracking all of these jokes, and Ray Liotta, he's laughing out loud, and then Joe Pesci, Tommy, he feels intimidated by that.
Yeah.
He feels intimidated by it, saying, funny how, like, what's up with that?
Funny how, what am I, a clown? I amuse you? It's so good.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just, you can already see that Tommy himself has, like, grown to become, like, this ruthless man who doesn't take crap from anybody.
Yeah.
And you know, ends up joking with Henry Hill in the end, but like still you see that he
even jokes with him. He says, Henry, you may fold under questioning. He does say that. So this whole movie is good foreshadowing to what happens in the end here. But the owner of that restaurant, he tells Tommy he's got a big bill. Remember, he runs up, he says, you owe me $7,000 or something like that. Tommy breaks a glass over his head in pure Tommy fashion. And then I think it might even be the next scene.
Yeah, it jumps into the manager telling Paulie, like, dude,
bandage on his head. He says, listen, Tommy's gonna kill me. He's got me looking over both shoulders when I enter my car to go to work, and he wants him to do something about it. Yeah. And Paulie's the guy. I think Henry even describes him as the policeman for wise guys. And so these wise guys, they're doing illegal stuff, but they need protection from other people trying to take their stuff. They can't go to the cops because it's all illegal, so they go to Paulie. He can help them, and that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to get help from Tommy.
Even with Paulie, though, you got to be careful with your words because he, you know.
Oh yeah.
Paulie's just like, well, what should I do? Should I kill him or something or whatever? And the manager says, well, I mean,
wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah.
Wouldn't be a bad idea. And Paulie just like.
Yeah, I love when he talks about because he wants to go in on it. He wants Paulie would take a percentage of the income if he gives protection to the diner owner. So Paulie says, I don't know anything about the restaurant business, and he looks over to Henry, and the owner says, Henry's in there all the time. Couple more minutes, he'd be a stool. But this movie's still funny. Like, in between all the serious stuff, it's a funny movie.
Yeah, it's hilarious, dude. And then we always gotta talk about this, you know, the one shot in the we gotta talk about
the tracking shot. There's a couple. Are you talking about the first one where he's meeting all the Tony 2 times and stuff that?
Yeah, there's that. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about another thing, but there's also this one shot where you're meeting all these different mobsters. And anyway, even though you only see them like once in the movie, you can already love their personalities just for
so
having
wide.
Yeah, for having just like one line, you like say, yeah, all these guys are just so charming and cool and everything.
It gives you the idea that each of these guys could have a story similar to Henry's. And it just broadens the horizons on this movie.
Exactly, yeah. So,
anyway, they rip him off, obviously, the diner owner. They blow up his place. Tommy wants him to double date because he found this girl who doesn't trust him. Big surprise. Someone doesn't trust Tommy. But she's smart. So they go on the double date. Henry is not happy. Henry hates this other chick she's with, Karen. And this is where something interesting happens because in voiceover movies, you usually only get the voiceover of the main character. But in this movie, it switches to Karen's point of view.
Yeah.
At this moment. And, you know, she says something like, he was so annoying, he was always fidgeting.
I could not stand him.
I could not. Yeah, he was always fidgeting around. And so, just to get her take, without having to see it, to be able to hear it, and
because she's really one of the most important characters in the film, because while you see, Jimmy's side and how he's like a part of these like gang these gang heists and like slinging and everything, you see from Karen's point of view, you see her lifestyle in result of Henry's actions.
Yeah. And first time I ever saw this movie, I thought she was going to be a small character, and she ends up being, basically the second main character.
You see the lifestyle through a woman's eye, through a wife's eye.
Yeah.
And it's
you get the lifestyle, and she's not too happy with it. She goes to a party, to a housewarming or something, and she doesn't like the gossip. She tells Henry, "I don't know if I could live like this," and so there's struggle on both ends.
Yeah. But like when they first meet, they hate each other. They absolutely hate each other.
Yeah.
But like, they can't deny it. They find each other to be, at least attractive.
And on the second date, Henry stands her up. That she's so mad, and Tommy's a little worried, so they go looking for him.
Yeah.
And of course, he's where they thought he was, skipping out on the date. And he thinks she's sexy the way she's coming at him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what gets Henry interested in her. And so that kicks off that relationship.
Pretty much, yeah. They're pretty much together at that point. And then, they're going on dates more. They're hanging out more. And then we go into this amazing scene. This is like a very famous scene that a lot of people, like a lot of like film classes talk about.
It's one of the most famous striking shots at the Copacabana.
Yeah, where they go into Copacabana, and it's all one shot from behind them, and you see them walking into the kitchen, and all these extras.
You just see the perks.
Yeah, all these extras moving around. It feels so choreographed, but at the same time, it feels like so improvised, and it's just. It's absolutely insane how much it could get to so much activity going on with no cuts or like with no issues.
And do you know how long it took them to get this scene?
I have no idea.
They only shot 8 times.
They only shot this 8 times?
8 times.
I felt like
the amount of planning that had to go on before that must be crazy. But yeah, I was surprised to learn that it only took 8 shots to get this. It's a famous shot, it really is. Henry gets some money from Paul Lee for doing something and takes Karen on a cruise where they meet her neighbor, who we'll talk about later, but no one's too sure about him, and she's pretty quiet about him. Then it cuts to Maury's commercial, which was paid for by Jimmy, we learn later, and Jimmy wants his money. But they didn't agree on the interest amount, and so Jimmy takes the phone cord, wraps it around his neck, threatens him. I think his hairpiece even falls off at that point.
It does a little.
Maury, I like Maury in this movie.
He is. He's he's very persistent.
He's funny.
And to get what he wants, but he's also very funny.
Oh yeah, Maury talks also about how he should have ratted Jimmy out. He could have ratted Jimmy out 1,000,000 times, and that's really what makes him choke him out. And so you really get to see Jimmy's. Jimmy doesn't take threats like that lightly, and we see it between this scene with Maury and then with Billy Batts later on.
With Billy Batts, does it go into that? Do we get into that scene? I mean, we see.
I'm trying to see
at this point, is Karen and Henry Hill married?
I think that's about right now, because Karen calls him crying. That takes place first.
Right.
He goes over, and this is also a good shot. The camera is in the middle of the street. Henry pulls up to Karen's house, gets out, he turns around, tucks the gun, and then the camera just follows him slowly, kind of like a Western.
Yeah.
Slowly follows him, and he's got such power because the camera isn't moving, so all you're focused on is his actions. And he takes the gun out, beats him over the head, threatens to shoot him.
Beats the neighbor.
I think he grabbed Karen.
Yes.
And that's why Henry had to take him out a little bit. And then he gives the gun to Karen to keep her safe. And it turns her on. Then the next scene, I think, is them getting married.
Yeah. I mean, can I say, like, with that whole scene in general, like, the sound design in this movie is like you feel
Oh.
him.
Yeah.
You feel Henry beating.
You feel
this
the butt of
guy
that gun in your
with-
jaw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the face. Like it's so brutal to watch because of the sound design. You really hear that.
Yeah.
And
So next is the wedding.
yeah, the wedding, the
and-
Jewish wedding.
Yeah, the Jewish wedding. And she gets all the money that she could ask for.
Honestly.
And then their dance. Oh, and everyone's named Marie and Petey because they're all Italians. And that's funny because I'm Italian, so I kind of relate a little bit to that. There's a lot of those in my family. But yeah, and then she's worried about the bag because she thinks someone might steal it. And he goes, trust me, no one's going to steal that bag. So you really she starts to understand the loyalty and the honor that being part of this system is.
Yeah, exactly. And so you want to jump forward into the Billy Bat scene?
Yeah, real quick before that, though, I just want to touch on the Karen scene. She's definitely, there's a little bit of a montage of after their wedding, and you get to see Karen's, she's definitely money hungry at this point. She refers to amounts of money in measurements instead of dollar bills, and she's definitely getting spoiled.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, yeah.
And that I think that's part of why she sticks on this train. Who wouldn't want to be showered with money all the time?
Exactly. Like, I mean, not only that, but like, even how bad Henry treats her sometimes. I guess some girls are like that. Some guys are like that. They like
Money whore.
being treated bad. Like, no,
Oh,
I mean, not
bad?
like treated bad, but like,
I thought we were still talking about money.
no, not money.
Okay.
But like, he likes how intimate Henry is. As
Like
a
the
fetish.
power?
I don't know, the power. She has a real fetish for that, I think.
Well, yeah, she even says it turned me on because the gun in her hand, and even going through the Copacabana, that was just a taste of her breaking the rules for the first time, skipping the line, And so each thing gets upped, and the wedding's fantastic, and there's all this money, and then she gets the new car, and everything's nice. And actually, the two kids in this movie are actually her kids.
Really?
Yeah, they're actually her kids, and so when she's in the phone booth screaming, "You whore!" and her kids are in that scene, and so there was a little bit of a splashback from that.
That's so funny. I didn't know that.
But
so Henry opens up his own bar. He opens up his own bar, and I guess some of the mobsters pretty much just hang out there now.
Yep. And then Billy Batts, who seems to be one of the group, he was imprisoned for 6 years, and this is the day he got out, and so he's celebrating.
Yeah, and he is a made man. He is a mob boss. He's
he's Sicilian.
He's a person that nobody messes with because he is a made man. And so
there's the party. Jimmy, Henry.
Tommy, and Henry are all together, all hanging out and everything. And then Billy Batts recognizes Tommy from shining his shoes because I guess Tommy used to be this amazing shoe shiner.
Used to make him look like mirrors.
Yeah, exactly. And Tommy, he's just like, I don't do that anymore. I'm
no more shines, Billy.
Yeah, I've been running things.
And then
now.
he says, "Yeah, don't get too big on me."
Yeah.
And then everything's fine. They walk away, and then he says it one more time. He says, "Go get your fucking shine box or whatever." And I don't know why Joe Pesci loves breaking glasses over people's head, but he breaks down their glass on the bar, I think, this time. And he tells the guy, he kind of gets shuffled out of there because everyone knows Tommy's a loose cannon. So Jimmy and Henry kind of bring him to the door, and he says, keep that guy here because I'll be back. And so the entire night goes by, the last person leaves, and literally it's Jimmy, Tommy, and Billy Batts, and then the last guy, as soon as the last guy leaves, Tommy's in there, and Tommy goes wild. But everyone's in their places. Jimmy takes Billy by the neck. Henry grabs the door, locks it, and they start beating the shit out of Billy.
Yeah, seriously, and as Henry, the real life Henry described, this is how Tommy killed Billy Batts, is just by actually breaking his pistol on his face.
And actually, Joe Pesci did not. Tommy's character did not look at all like Joe Pesci. He was in real life he was
like 6'4".
he was 6'2",
He was like 6'2".
and he was only 28 years old when he died. So it's a little. I'm glad Joe Pesci got to play this part, obviously, and he won the award.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this would have been a lot different of a movie if anyone else played Tommy except for Joe Pesci.
Oh, it's insane.
I would love to see the trio. I'd love to see this movie, Goodfellas, and then Casino, and then Raging Bull, because his characters in all three of those movies are really good.
Mm-hmm, yeah, definitely. Joe Pesci plays a much different character in Raging Bull than in this movie. Here he's much more angry, obviously.
That would be the Joe Pesci trio, the trilogy of Joe Pesci.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, the F-bomb count originally only called for 70, but ended up with 300. 12th most of any film. Joe Pesci said about half of them. So, and most of those were improv. So, yeah, Joe Pesci really...
Wasn't it The Wolf of Wall Street who ended up taking the cake?
I think so.
Yeah, Wolf of Wall Street. It'd be like South Park or something.
Yeah.
It beat South Park for like the most F-bombs. I think the only one that has more F-bombs in it was this documentary talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise, it's Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, yeah.
Is like the movie that has most of that.
Another Spielberg film, or another Scorsese film.
Yeah, another Scorsese movie. It's so funny. Did you know that Joe Pesci has a rap song?
No.
About this movie?
Does he?
Joe Pesci has actually like an album. I guess he stepped his toe on the music industry, and he actually raps.
Wow.
He actually raps about like being a wise guy.
I feel like it would ruin this movie. I feel like I can't watch that.
You got it. It's just you have to see it to believe it. It's ridiculous.
Take a look.
Like Joe Pesci is actually rapping.
All right, real quick. How many deaths do you think take place on film in this movie?
How many deaths?
Yeah, give me an estimate.
Well, like the ones that you actually see, 2, but like the deaths that you see that are basically like aftermaths, like I'd say like 15.
There's only 5 people who die in this movie. You got Spidey, Billy Batts, Stax, Maury, and that's it.
Yeah, but then they kill. But then like when
Tommy, of course, but.
Yeah, but like with Jimmy, when Jimmy orders all the killings on the people, there's like 10 people that died there.
Yes, but you don't see those deaths, and the point I'm making is that people see this as a largely violent film, and it is, but for only 5 deaths to take place on screen, when you hear about a movie like this, takes place in New York, with De Niro, directed by Scorsese, I would say 15 people are going to die on screen, no problem. And to only be 5, I think it works with the film because they're so memorable. Each death is so memorable.
I feel like 5 is a good count because every death like meant something.
Yeah.
It meant like a change in the film. Every death mattered and changed everything. Yeah. For the rest of the film, it's important. So I felt like that's an appropriate number. Really.
Each death steers the movie in a different direction, and makes the audience actually feel the deaths instead of just there's another guy who died.
Right. So
another testament to how good Scorsese is.
Yeah. So they killed Billy Batts, or so they assume that they do, and then they drive over to Tommy's mom's house.
Yeah, to pick up a shovel.
To pick up a shovel, and everything, and so, and you know his mom is still awake, and so they end up having dinner with their mom, which is this amazing improv scene of the mom played by Martin Scorsese's
mother,
mother, and it's just like, wow. And this is so like well done. The mom shows a painting of like the 2 dogs. Joe Pesci, like he's just like
looks like someone we know.
Yeah, it looks like someone like, oh, look at the 2 dogs. It goes one way and the other way. It's just like
one dog goes one way. One's looking east. One's looking west. What's the problem?
It's
so good.
It's so funny. It's so hilarious. It's just like it's
a great break from tension because we just got. It's probably the most memorable death in the film, Billy Batts, and we just got away from that and straight into this funny scene, and it all works perfectly.
Yeah, and so they jump in, jump back in, and then end up killing Billy Batts again because he ends up still being alive, and then And so after that, people are wondering. People are wondering, where did Billy Bats go? Where did he? Because he's a made man. He's a big deal. You know.
Yeah.
He's
got people keeping an eye on him.
Exactly.
And when he goes missing, people know.
Yeah. They don't know that it's from Tommy or Jimmy or anything, but
and if they did, it would mean certain death for Tommy and Jimmy.
Exactly.
Maybe not Tommy because he's Sicilian, but definitely Henry and Jimmy could definitely be in some danger. So it's really the stakes on this death are really important because, like you said, and when Henry later on, we're gonna skip ahead a little bit, but Henry gets made, so we think, and it actually results in his death.
Tommy.
Tommy.
Yeah.
And that's it's because of the death of Billy Bats that Tommy dies.
Yeah, and it's so.
And in your head, at least in my head, I go, it wasn't worth it. Tommy should have lived. Billy Bats, come on. But in the sense of the story, you gotta give it away.
With this, you have to tell, like, there's no other way. There's no other way that they could have handled this situation because Tommy, he's a lunatic.
Yeah, well, they trick Henry and it's a bad situation because you want Tommy to live, but because of his actions, you know why he had to die, and it's still sad. It is sad, even though he's such a bad character. He's arguably one of the villains, just based off his actions and how they affect the people around him. But you still don't want him to die, even though you know what's happening.
Going back, they end up going to prison. Somebody rats on Henry.
Yeah, Henry and Tommy are roughing up some guy. I think he's like a truck driver, and the truck driver's wife is actually a typist for the FBI.
Worked with the FBI.
And she rats all them out. She says, my brother and their friends are crazy, and he rats Henry and Tommy and everyone out.
Yeah, exactly. So Henry, Paulie, and a few of the other mobsters are the ones that end up going to prison. But, like, it's crazy. Even at this point, they're still slinging. They're still slinging. They're still making deals and everything.
Henry's still on drugs, even though he's not supposed to be.
Yeah. Oh, well, at this point, this is where Henry starts to deal drugs.
Do them himself, I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
He's doing them himself.
Yeah.
Oh, and real quick, him and Karen aren't on good circumstances at this point.
Oh, yeah. Because
he's been away from home for a lot of time.
Because he's been having a few
because he's been
mistresses.
having an affair. So she catches on, and then you get the nice scene of her over him with the revolver, and that's actually, when you think about that scene, it's tough for the actors because it's POV for each of them, and so they're actually looking into the camera, not each other. So it's tough to act when you're staring down a lens.
It really works, yeah, but it works really well because
yeah,
everybody here is so great. It's insane.
and I find every scene to be memorable. You watch other movies and you can't really tell what happened after the first scene and then the second scene, third scene. In this scene, you can recount every scene because either someone dies or major story developments happen,
or just good dialogue.
Oh, and music too.
Oh, music. That's another crazy thing with this. You feel like as the movie goes on, it first starts out slowly. It starts out like with nice 50s music, early 50s music. It's very slow, and then you get into the 60s where it starts to you get into that more into that rock and roll era. As the music becomes more faster paced, the movie feels more faster paced, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
There's less one shots. There's less slow tracking shots. You get more cuts as you go on with the film.
Everything's faster, and it also, you get into Henry's mind in a way because when the helicopter's above and he's still doing drugs and he's running from the police, you can see it in his mind, just how the quick cuts and how he's moving his head. Everything is faster from the midway point on.
Yeah, right. So he's when they're in prison, Henry starts to get in his hand in drug dealing, dealing cocaine, dealing opioids, a bunch of different drugs. He starts getting into that and realizes that this is a huge money. You can make big bucks out of just doing this. But at the same time, he has to keep it a secret, right?
Yeah.
He has to keep it a secret because you're not allowed to do that in when you're a part of the mafia,
Mm-hmm.
because the punishment to that is death. But even then, he's still able to get Jimmy and Tommy into the mix of it because they know, like, dude, they're making like a lot of money over this, and so. Yeah, obviously, Karen and him, they're in terrible terms right now because Karen has just been doing all these errands for
and she
Henry.
finds out that he's been getting visits from some of these mistresses, and
one of them,
the final mistress, and she makes a big scene in the prison, and Henry's just making deals left and right, and he's kind of turned to a little bit like Jimmy, because this is the first time you get to see him pass over 20s to the police officers, and he's definitely made that change.
Yeah, exactly. So this prison scene doesn't last very long, but you see it does explain like a lot of how corrupt the prison system was back in the day, because they're just living like in their own apartments, really.
Yeah. They get their own section.
Yeah, they make their own food, and and all they had to do was pay like $3,000 a month to the police.
And the old guy making the sauce for the spaghetti is actually Scorsese's dad too. So it's a family affair, this one. And
pretty much, yeah.
Then we move on to we're out of jail and we're with Tommy, and we're with Spider.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And this is a bad scene.
This is crazy.
It's sad.
It is crazy. Spider, who
he seems to be just the waiter at this bar that they're at. I can't remember if I don't think it's Henry's bar. They're somewhere, and Tommy shoots him. Can you remember why?
Because Henry.
Because he's going too slow with the drinks.
He's going too
That's
slow.
Correct.
He forgets to give Tommy his drink, and so all of a sudden Tommy just gets crazy. Like he tells Spider to dance.
He's in his own head, and he thinks that he's being slow on purpose, and he's crazy. So he shoots him, and he accidentally shoots him in the foot. And if that wasn't bad enough, later on he comes in. Spider does with a bandage on his foot, trotting around, and he's even slower this time. I wonder why, Tommy. There's a bandage on his leg now, and Jimmy kind of, Spider mouths off a little bit to Tommy, just a touch, and then Jimmy is like, "You gonna take that? You gonna take that, Tommy, from this guy? What's the world coming to? You're gonna take that?" And Joe Pesci stands up and shoots the guy.
Just straight up kill him, kills him, shoots him freaking 5 times or something.
Henry checks his pulse and he's dead.
Yeah, which by the way, in this actual scene when they shot that, Spider accidentally he gets cut from broken glass because as he's falling, he fell so bad on the counter. Yeah. He actually cuts himself by breaking the glass on his hand, and so he had to be sent to they immediately had to take him to the hospital.
Jeez.
So it was an intense scene.
Yeah.
That they shot there. So if you look closely, you see that his hand is just is getting all cut, but they
give me another reason to watch.
Yeah. So.
And then we meet Stax Harrison, who's a getaway driver. He seems like he's part of the group a little bit. This is Sam Jackson.
Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson. It's one of his
pre-Pulp Fiction,
before he was really famous. Yeah, honestly.
Actually, it's so good. Do you know what Sam Jackson's first role in Hollywood was? His first job, not his first role.
I have no idea.
He was the stand-in for Bill Cosby for the Cosby Show.
Really?
Yes. He would put on the sweater and he would stand on Bill Cosby's mark, and they would get all the lights situated, and then he would leave and Bill Cosby would show up.
That's so funny. I did not know that.
That's a great link. That's a great little Hollywood story.
That's crazy. But yeah, this was before he was really famous.
Yeah.
And this was before he kind of I don't know. This was before he had his trademark, talk or whatever. The way he, how loud he was. In this movie, he's much more quiet.
Mm-hmm. So, which is necessary because it's supposed to be based on a true story. So you want to keep the actors a little bit low key, especially when you have a big name in there. He wasn't at the time, but now he is, of course. Mm-hmm. Now we get into the Lufthansa heist.
Lufthansa heist, which is the biggest heist in all of American history or something.
Up till that point, yep.
And
And Henry's in the shower as it happens. He hears it over the radio, and he's so happy, of course, because they're millionaires now. And then they go into the bar with Tommy, and these guys got fur coats on and new Cadillacs.
Yeah, these people who are who's made like all this money are like immediately blowing off, which is attracting like a lot of attention.
Yeah.
I mean, well, like Jimmy is at this point, even though they scored this much money.
At this point, Jimmy's as paranoid as Tommy is.
Exactly. Yeah, he's super paranoid, and even Maury. Maury is just like he's angry at him. He wants his money. He wants his share of the money, and it kind of feels like maybe in a way Jimmy's being sort of passive aggressive because when
it seems like he might have done this in the past and Maury doesn't want it to happen again.
Yeah,
that's kind of what it seems like.
Well, Maury. Well, the thing is, like, Maury didn't pay him his money. It took a while for Maury to pay his money for his commercial,
which is why Jimmy's saying "fuck you."
Yeah, Jimmy's like, "Nah, I'm not gonna give your money now.
You didn't give me my money. I'm not giving you yours.
Yeah, I'm gonna take my time on this, or not even give it to him at all."
And then the killing spree starts. We never get to see most of these deaths, but guy with the big hair, I forget his name. He's in the freezer.
Yeah, it starts with a C. I'm trying to remember.
Somewhat minor character.
Yeah, I can't remember the one with the big eyebrows. But yeah, you see like Jimmy.
Frankie Carbone.
Yeah, Frankie Carbone. He doesn't trust anybody anymore at this point. He decides to kill like
Jimmy. You mean? Yep.
Did I say Jimmy?
No, it sounded like we were still talking about Frankie Carbone. But go ahead.
Oh no. Jimmy just basically hits everybody. He hits like everybody that was a part of that.
From the ground up, from the little guys, because Tommy kills Stacks in the back of the head. He was the getaway driver who fell asleep in the getaway car, which was foreshadowed by Henry when he was talking to Karen. Because Karen thinks he's going to get pinched, and he says, "The guys who get pinched are the guys who fall asleep in the getaway car." So Tommy kills Stacks. And then Frankie Carbone goes, and I think a couple others, until it's really just the big guys. It's Henry, Tommy, Jimmy, and Karen.
At this point, yeah, Jimmy is absolutely insane. He kills all of his friends, all the people that he cared about, just because he was paranoid. And the only people that he left were his the two friends that he was closest with. And so a lot of, people might wonder, okay, why didn't he kill Henry then? Well, the biggest reason is that he wasn't demanding of Jimmy for his share of the money. He didn't, he wasn't that, he was smart about it. He was smart about not messing with Jimmy at this point.
Yeah.
And so,
especially, I think part of that, it fits with the whole story where he looked up to Jimmy even as a kid. And I think Henry still kind of sees Jimmy as the adult in the situation because Henry hasn't done a whole lot of growing up besides just age. So he's still kind of clamoring on because without Jimmy, he kind of feels like nothing. He's not part of the group anymore. And so I think he takes a back seat to Jimmy in just about every scene they're both in.
Yeah. And it only ends up being their fault because Tommy, they end up killing Maury. Killing Maury,
yep.
Because they don't trust him either.
And then you get everyone thinks Tommy's going to be made, and they're celebrating. And Tommy goes off. He gets in the Cadillac, goes off into the garage, goes into the room, and gets shot in the back. Possibly even he gets shot in the back of the head because then the voiceover says his mom isn't even going to get an open casket.
Yeah. Because
his head's mush at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, adds to the
darkness.
The darkness.
Yeah, it's crazy. And in real life though, like they actually didn't know what happened to Tommy because apparently he disappeared. They don't know. It's still unsolved to what actually happened to Tommy DeSimone in real life. So they weren't even able to have a funeral with him because he was gone.
Yep, at 28 years old.
Yeah, and
gone.
There's a lot of speculation on what actually happened to Tommy. Some say apparently Henry had an affair with Karen, and so that ended up getting a bunch of like people to talk about him, and people started ratting on him basically to the mob bosses, and that might be. Some people say he actually could have been killed by John Gotti, who's like a real life mob boss who was very famous.
Yeah.
One of the later famous ones. And so but otherwise it's still like just like a theory on actually what actually happened.
Yeah,
to
these guys were
Tommy.
ruthless. I mean, the real Jimmy Conway was responsible for about 50 to 60 murders. So these guys were serious.
Yeah. So
just kind of a funny story. After this movie came out, Frank Severo, who played Frankie Carbone, the guy who dies in the ice truck or whatever, the freezer truck, he sued The Simpsons for using a character too close to his likeness. And he sued for $250 million. He lost the case, but he kind of vowed off. He kind of hates the Goodfellas movie at this point. And so I
Frankie
thought
Carbone?
Yeah, that was kind of sad. He's a big character in that movie.
Yeah.
And he sued, lost, and kind of disgraced his name a little bit. And he's been
that's annoying. Why did he do that?
Yeah, he was going for the cash grab. He realized he wasn't too much of an actor, I suppose, and so he wanted to cash grab off his number one hit.
Yeah, that's annoying.
Even The Simpsons stepped into this one.
Yeah, right. I mean, everybody. I mean, so many people are inspired by so many like shows, so many movies are inspired by this movie. It really left a footprint on how authentic that people try to mimic.
Yeah.
But like they can't because like people don't have like the mental capacity that Martin Scorsese does.
Yeah.
He's like in this he really went all out with
his
this
love
one.
for New York shines through this movie, along with all of his other movies that are based in New York. And can you imagine if Tom Cruise played Henry? Because that was the initial casting.
Really?
Yes, which I feel like it would have been terrible.
You think so?
I think the fact that Henry is one of the characters that I've never seen in anything else, I think it adds a realism to the movie.
Okay.
And so I think it would have thrown me off a little bit. And also Madonna was supposed to play Karen.
Oh, gross.
So yeah.
Yeah, gross. I wouldn't want that.
Scorsese made the right choices there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he goes to the FBI. That might still be in the 70s. He goes to the FBI for help because, well, actually, we should talk about the scene with Karen and Jimmy. Jimmy's trying to kill Karen. He tries to get her in that room, and it's super creepy. He goes, just down the street and to the right.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of coats over there, just down the street and to the right. Yep, right in there. And you can tell that even she knows that this isn't going to go well. She's about to die. She drives home to Henry crying, and that's when Henry decides, if Jimmy, my idol, isn't even on my side anymore, trying to kill my wife, and probably me next, I'm going to finally go to the feds with this.
Yeah, no.
And so he tries to get into the witness protection. I think they put him in the witness protection program, something like that.
He gets into the witness protection program after being arrested for about to be arrested because like he's this drug lord now.
Yeah, at this point he's making even gun runs for Jimmy, and there's a scene where the silencers won't connect to the pistols, and he,
this scene is this scene is absolutely crazy because it goes from like hour to hour on like what Henry is dealing with, and he's jacked up on coke,
and it's shot and it's cut so quickly and it's shot so vigorously that you can really see the paranoia from Henry. He's got the police helicopter above. He's got the wrong pistols in his trunk that he's got to go swap out. And then he's so worried. His priorities are so out of whack because he's as worried about the police helicopter above him as he is about the sauce that needs to get made for dinner tonight. And so he's all out of whack, and you can tell the drugs have got to him, and everything's
starting to his brain into mush.
Yeah, and I think even Paulie or Jimmy says that.
Yeah, Jimmy says that.
Yeah,
that's what I'm quoting.
He's gone bad.
Yeah. So it's a very intense scene, and then eventually he gets caught, and he was being followed all along.
Yep.
And so, yeah, the only way for for Henry to get out of this situation is to break the two rules that he's been taught all along.
Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut.
Exactly. Yeah, he ends up being a rat. And he explains that to the prosecutor, who, by the way, is actually played by the actual prosecutor who told the real Henry Hill to be a rat in the first place. Yep. Yeah. So that's so interesting. That I don't know. It's crazy, but Yeah, so he ends up ratting Jimmy and Paulie even after Paulie helped him after giving him like
Paulie's the good guy in this whole movie. He never rats out his friends. He sticks to his ideals.
he gives Henry money out of sympathy. Money.
He fixes his relationship with Karen because he says, "I know how to talk to her, especially her." And so he's really the Mr. Fix-It in this whole thing. He's a good guy. Paulie's one of the good ones in this.
Definitely.
The rest are pretty bad.
Yeah, exactly. So, yep. Jimmy and Paulie, they're basically all done with. They're pretty much through life in jail.
Yep.
And Henry pretty much gets back and moves to like a different state and like lives a normal life, and he feels like, and it's miserable to him. It's miserable that he doesn't live this great high life anymore, and now he basically has to live like a normal person.
Yeah.
And which is a perfect way to end his character arc, because like his arc throughout the entire movie, you see him rise and then just fall into a complete, not like to like completely poor, just like a middle class person. But like to him, he feels like that's like the worst thing you could be.
Yep. And even the song the first song in the movie that kicks it all off is Rags to Riches. And this is definitely a Rags to Riches story in a roundabout way where they're doing illegal things. But he goes from a life of working from 11 to the day he dies. And he wants the life of fame and fortune. And he's got these people who have the knowledge and the ability to get what they want. And they have the power, and he loves that. And that's what drives him through the rest of his life, is that power.
And then it's all over. And it's gone.
And that's all over. Yeah, even the last line of the film, he talks about how he has to live his life like a schmuck. And, what passes for pasta and noodles, what passes for spaghetti and meatballs when you're living the life of a gangster is a lot different than when you're living in the witness protection program. And so he definitely talks about how far he's come. Rags to riches and then back to rags.
Pretty much.
All right, I think that'll do it.
Yeah, you lead to that last shot of Joe Pesci shooting at the camera, which is a great.
I think it's a throwback to Western films.
It's a throwback to. It's a complete like shot from. It's like completely inspired by blatant like shot inspired by The Great Train Robbery, which is like this old like silent film.
Yeah, the act of shooting directly into the camera.
Yeah. So it's a great way to end the movie.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts? Any issues at all with this movie?
I have 0 issues with this movie. This is a 10 out of 10 for me. I think we already knew that. How about yourself?
I'd give it like a strong 9. I give it a strong 9. I still think I like Raging Bull more than this one. Just because I felt like that one's just more emotionally grabbing. I like that stuff. I like stuff that makes me cry.
Yeah.
But like with this one, it's just so fun to watch. It's so great and it's so authentic, and it's, everything technically is amazing. But the best thing is that Martin Scorsese really made this film try to get every plot point correct and right. And Henry Hill himself in real life has said like this movie is like 80% true.
It's as close as we've ever seen to how it really was.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will about like The Godfather, but that movie is based off of a fiction story.
Yeah,
sure, it's like it kind of like tells like the sort of style and like the real life aspects of like mobsters, but it's definitely more dramatized. Here they really show like the brutality of being in a mobster gang, and like how messed up these guys are.
Yeah. The no nonsense world of the mind of a crazy mobster, and when you're around people like Tommy and Jimmy, you're gonna turn into a sour apple no matter what. All right. I
So,
think that's the end of this one.
Yep. So, hope you guys enjoyed our discussion on Goodfellas and Toy Story and Spider-Man. The next film that we're going to be discussing, it's my turn to pick. The next film I want to discuss is a movie that came out 2017. It's with Robert Pattinson. It's called Good Time.
All right.
It's a good time. It's a good time. I'll say that.
All right.
It's shorter. We've been talking about a lot of like very long movies.
Yeah, these have been long.
these past few episodes, but this one's a shorter one.
Yeah.
I think this one you'll actually might enjoy.
All right. Sounds good.
All
We'll
right.
See you next time.
Yeah, I am Nate,
And I'm Kevin.
and this is Film Dispute.